Hello, hello. Today we're talking about Chaos Dwarf RORs. I'm going to take a look at each one, see what it provides over the basic variant, and talk about when I would include them in my armies. As per usual, we're going to be focusing mainly on domination mode, but the information could help you out in campaign or land battles as well. Let's get started. First up, we have the Blazing Beards of Bazherk. They bring the AP blasting charges that are unique among other Chaos Dwarf warriors. Otherwise, they're exclusive to the 1300 Infernal Alliance one, I believe, which gives you a nice bit of infantry clear to your front line for a much cheaper price, as well as having Frenzy, which means they have much more offensive stats once the battle is actually started. Like if we start the battle right here, Frenzy will apply, and other offensive stats are much, much better, which is pretty nice, as Chaos Dwarfs are typically a pretty defensive faction as far as their infantry is concerned. Having that little bit of extra damage output on your front line is actually quite nice, as well as the cheap blasting charges make them an absolute unit, and they can clear enemy infantry very, very quickly. Even elite units will crumble to those blasting charges, so they're a very, very solid choice to include into your front line. Second, we have the Immortals. 1500 gold, super elite, Infernal Ironsworn dual weapon infantry. These guys are the reverse of the last ones we just saw. They actually lose the blasting charges, which is a pretty big hit. That's one of the big appeals of the Infernal Ironsworn, is those armor-piercing blasting charges. But they do have the melee stats to make up for it, as well as this ability right here, the Undying Will. Extra vigor, and entities cannot die while their hit points are above 75%. I don't find this ability that useful. Entities not dying while they're healthy. Well, entities don't die when they're healthy that much anyway. It stops them from being like heavily overkilled by like a cannon or something, but it's not hugely impactful in that regard. And then vigor is kind of nice. It just makes your vigor not run out as quickly, but usually perfect vigor or vigor refresh abilities are useful late into the fight after they've been fighting for a while. And if they've been fighting for a while, they've probably taken a lot of damage and this ability is turned off anyway, so it's alright. But they do fill the role of a very aggressive infantry unit, which otherwise the Chaos Dwarfs do lack. Most infantry units are very defensive, they're shielded, they have very high melee defense. So having that actual like lawnmower frontline unit can be a nice inclusion, but for 1500, you need to have a really good reason to include them, and a way to protect them from just getting hit by spells or artillery. If they can just get one shot like that, you're not going to get a whole lot out of them. But if they are allowed to grind in the front line, they'll do quite a good job. The Granite Guard, the ROR Blunderbuss. So their unique abilities are they have the suppression mechanic on their missile attack, lowering speed of whatever unit they target. And they have the dig-in mechanic, which entrenches them after 25 seconds of not moving, giving them extra range, missile resist, and expert charge defense. Let's talk about this ability real quick. I find this ability really pretty useless because they have to sit perfectly still to keep it active. If they move slightly, if they turn to get a better angle, it turns off, and it's not going to turn on again for another 25 seconds, which is just a really, really long downtime. The effects are great when they're active, but in a multiplayer game, in a domination game, it's usually pretty dynamic. There's going to be targets coming at you from all different angles. Things going to be diving your backline, trying to shut these guys down. So you're going to need to actually turn and address those threats very often, which means this ability is not going to have a lot of uptime. That said, this unit is still quite exceptional. It has a very hefty stat bonus over the basic blunderbuss infantry, which makes it a lot more independent than the basic blunderbuss infantry. As well as the suppression is quite nice to just slow down big targets and focus fire them with other blunderbusses or fire glaives. So despite their unique ability being pretty underwhelming, this is actually still a pretty solid unit, as the stat bonus you get, as I should show on screen, is just staggering. So if you're going for in a fairly elite gunline build, these guys aren't a bad inclusion, even if that ability is pretty underwhelming. On to our cavalry. First, we have Ogla Khan's Wolf Boys. So this is another unit that gains massively increased melee stats over the basic variant, more than just the Chevron would imply. Same with the Granite Guard. They also have the Pelt of Wolfhag, which is minus 75% speed to units that are routing or broken, which means they're very, very good at chasing things off the battlefield and killing them. And they also lose the Malign Authority ability, the one that all the other Hobgoblin units have, which means their leadership is far, far better than the basic Skirmish Cav unit. They also apply fire weakness on their missile attack, which I find to be the least valuable thing about them, as you have many sources of flammable in the Chaos Dwarf roster. So it's nice, but you have other sources of it if you really need it. But honestly, these guys are just a really nice kind of bridge unit. You don't have any other real mid-range cavalry unit, you have your cheap Wolf Raiders at 550, and then you have your elite Bull Centaur Renders at 1450 or 1400, depending on the variant. These guys at 950 actually fill a pretty nice niche of being a decent light cav unit with some skirmish potential. So as far as, if you just want a better skirmisher, they don't really do that job. But if you just want a decent light cav unit, they're actually pretty good at filling that role that is otherwise completely missing from the Chaos Dwarf roster. So they're a pretty solid choice to fill that hole. Next, we have the Hashed Stark Ravagers, the Bull Centaur Render ROR. They have dual weapons, but also they have the Shield Breaker. They have a missile attack that hits very, very hard, is armor piercing, and has Shield Breaker. They have physical resistance. They have Guardian, and they have Revel in Fear, which is a massive, massive melee steroid based on wavering enemy units nearby. These guys, it feels like CA had a lot of ideas on what to give these guys, and ended up just giving them all of them. They have so much packed into them. Like I said, Fizz Resist, Missile Attack, Guardian, Revel in Fear. It's just such a packed unit on an already strong base. Bull Centaur Renders are incredible as is. So having all of those extra buffs make these things absolutely incredible. They are pretty much an auto-include in most competitive Dwarf builds at the moment. They just do so well into every target. They don't even need the bonus versus infantry to fight in melee. Their melee stats are incredible. The bonus versus infantry is just bonus at that point. They can fight even exceptionally elite cavalry units in melee very, very well. They can skirmish and delete big SEMs with those missile attacks. And they can play bodyguard if you need to, with, Astrogoth giving him even more physical resist, or any other lord you might have. And then, Revel in Fear. If you're winning a fight and the enemy's wavering, they just can get stronger and stronger and stronger. So these guys are absolute linebackers, and you should very often take them. On to our trains and artillery. First up, we have the Soul of Damnation. It's the Hell Cannon. It's not a new ROR. The Warriors Kiss have had this for a very, very long time. But compared to the regular Hell Cannon, it does have extra ammo, but I believe it has twice as much ammo. Actually, it has, I think the base gets 25. This one has 40. For only about 200 or 300 more gold, it's not a bad choice. The extra ammo. If you're bringing a Hell Cannon anyway, you better have a way to keep it alive, as they are kind of fragile. So if you have a way to keep it alive, you might as well keep it firing for a very, very long time. So if you're going to bring a Hell Cannon, Soul of Damnation is a pretty solid option, but it's still a Hell Cannon, which means it very rarely hits things, at least when I'm using it. When my opponent's using them, then they always hit things, but when I'm using them, they never seem to hit a damn thing. The Iron Demon ROR, the Demon's Tongue. So instead of having a shotgun, like the basic variant has, or, machine gun, whatever you want to call it, this guy is a flamethrower, which is actually pretty nasty. It has the discouraged effect, or the burnt effect for Mayan State leadership, but it also just hits really, really hard, especially if you can get down the side shots against light veteran infantry. It'll almost one-shot them. It does incredible amounts of damage. It's pretty micro-intensive. It's short range. You got to get up there and get those nice down the side shots. But if you can get those shots, it does incredibly good damage at clearing infantry. So, like I said, it's a little micro-heavy, but if you have the time and the effort to put in to get the value, it can easily pay it for yourself if you can keep it online. So it's a pretty high-risk, high-reward unit, but it's definitely very rewarding when you do get those shots off. And then I also want to put in this variant, the Demon's Tongue, with the Dreadquake Mortar, because this variant actually costs the exact same as the regular Iron Demon with the Dreadquake Mortar. So if you're gonna take a train with the mortar attached, this one is almost always the better option, because the Demon's Tongue is such a massive upgrade over the basic variant of the Iron Demon. And then having that with the Dreadquake Mortar, this is just such a massive centerpiece. Now, it's a big investment. It's not always the best thing. But if you're going to bring one of these big trains, it's the same price as the basic one, and it's just way better. So I would always take it. But that is all the RORs Dwarfs have at the moment. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you learned something. I will see you next time. Peace.